Cecil, I cannot start the recording. Amy needs to do that.
I will instruct her. Okay, Amy, time to start the recording.
Thank you. I have done so.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. I can see that all members of our committee have joined the meeting. I want just to the ground rules here. I want, to the extent that I will not be able to see on the screen, if an expert has joined, I would ask you to send an email after the meeting to Mike Alfieri, that is malfieri@darienct.gov, to confirm that you were at the meeting so that he can record that for his minutes. Number two, we're on the platform called Microsoft Team. It's hosted and organized by SLAM, and Amy Samuelson, the architect, is in charge as the organizer. I've asked everybody to be either on the computer or to be on your phone, not both. You must mute your microphone, whether it be on the computer or the phone, to put back, which creates all kinds of problems for everybody at the meeting. The public is welcome to join, whether by phone or by video. I will have to say that because of the length of this meeting, there'll be no public comment at this particular meeting. We have a very long presentation, which is our final presentation in design development. I have a call of everyone here. All committee members are present. So let's get the meeting started, unless there's any other issues that we have to speak to. When you speak, please unmute your microphone and identify who you are as you speak. Thank you. The first order of business is approval of the minutes of the meeting of March. I've sent a copy out to all of the members of the committee. Are there any corrections or adjustments to the minutes from the committee? Hearing none, may I ask for a motion to approve from Duke?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second from Randy Giraldo?
Second.
I will do a very short roll call to get your point of views. Seeing that Duke and Randy have already endorsed it, Nick Rongo, do you vote yes or no on approval?
Yes.
Katie Lublin, yes or no?
Yes.
Rusty Schreiner?
Yes.
Sean Brown?
Yes.
John Zagrodzky?
Yes.
Michael Perry?
Yes.
Diane Boston?
Yes.
And I approve as well, so that it's unanimous. The minutes are approved. Our next order of business is a quick update on the discussion that occurred at the Office of School Construction Grant and Review, the state office, concerning the enabling phase. And for that, I'm going to ask Duke and Diane to take on this conversation.
Duke, do you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. Diane, you may, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but about a month ago, we were up at the OSCG&R with Kemp and Amy, kind of going over the preliminary plan that we had and reconnecting with them and talking about the enabling phase. We had a call about a week ago to go over that we were going to present the enabling phase for reimbursement. There was a lot of conversation around that. They felt, we left the meeting, I believe, early in the year, that the enabling phase was going to be on the towns, on our dime, and we weren't going to put it through for reimbursement. I think we left the meeting, my recollection and my notes, that the School Construction and Grant Authority Group said they could work a timeline and include that in enabling phase in the overall reimbursement. So I think we agreed that that would be the best path to go down with the work that's been done on getting the phase approved and other town and regulatory approvals. So We had to submit a letter this week along with an additional form that outlines the phases of the project, including the enabling phase and a high-level cost estimate. That was submitted yesterday by the superintendent. That was the request from the School Construction Grant Authority Group that it be submitted by superintendent. So working with Amy Kemp and Dave Cravenzola, they crafted that response. So the next phase is to get another review meeting up at the state to go through what we're going to look at today. Diane, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, I think that just about covers it. Yeah, and I think once the state receives that letter from Dr. Adley, then Amy Samuelson and Kemp Morhard of SLAM will go ahead and request a meeting date. And we're looking for the beginning of May on that. And maybe Amy and Kemp want to add to the comment.
This is Kemp. No, you've summarized it perfectly. That's exactly how things are going to transpire. As soon as they've received Dr. Adley's communication, we will contact them and schedule 2 meetings for review of the project.
All right, for our next order of business, I'm going to turn this over to Rusty. I've sent a memorandum concerning adjustment for the basic services fee for SLAM. I've given you the rationale, and I'll let Rusty take it away. Rusty?
Thank you. As mentioned at the last meeting, we're very, very close on getting this contract done. One of the points that came up in our last face-to-face meeting was the basic service fees and some additional services. Kip and Duke and Diane and I met on this subject, and subsequently about, a week or 10 days ago, I went up to SLAM in Glastonbury and Kip and I sat down, and what you were sent is the result of that meeting. Essentially, the fee proposal that was in the RFP had some different assumptions that actually happened with the project, and very particularly the assumptions when the fee was put together was a 90,000 square foot building and a cost per square foot based on the state's requirement of 365. As you all know, we're in the 105 to 110 range in square footage, and the town has elected, or the building committee has elected, to spend more money per square foot to get the type of school that we want. After discussing this, we arrived at the number we think is fair from all parties. Just as a point of reference, the total of basic fee services is still below the other 2 finalists, so I think it is appropriate. In addition to the larger part of the basic services fee based on square footage, we had not, and neither had SLAM in their initial presentation of their proposal, envisioned a courtyard that was anything like that we were going to get, so that a relatively small amount was added on. And the other part of it had to do with the schedule. And because we are doing 2 phases and we're going to be starting, I hope, in June, it added 8 months onto the schedule versus what was in the RFP. We have simply taken the amount in the RFP, determined the monthly basis, multiplied it times the additional months, and got that additional total. So the total revised basic services fee is a little over $2.4 million. That's what's in that summary that you got. In addition to that, we have suggested several additional services. You've gotten the outline of those services. It makes sense to us to have SLAM do that. In particular, the steel pre-detailing, which actually is a service that is normally done by the fabricators. So we're actually simply moving the cost from the fabricators to doing it beforehand. You'll get a better, it's actually better in quality, and more importantly, it can be done very quickly. So that, while it looks like an additional service, it is not an additional cost. The geotech we've already talked about, I believe, in a couple of meetings, and a couple of the smaller consultants. We have the chance to do that selection process and management ourselves, or put it under SLAM's wing. It makes a lot of sense to let them handle that, which they normally do anyway. So that's where we are. Discussion? Anybody?
Rusty, I should add that the additional that are listed at the bottom of the paragraph, such as the geotechnical guys, the third-party code review, and special inspections, were all within the original cost estimate, but they were called consultants. They were called in various areas of, for example, the steel construction, the detailing was in the cost of steel originally. So these are not really new costs as such. These are just merely more identified that they'll, as against some other consultant or whatever, or they'll be responsible for the consultant. Is that?
That's correct. They're not additional costs.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'm going to make a motion to approve this adjustment in the basic service fee.
I will
Rusty,
second it, Duke.
Duke will second. I'm going to do a quick roll call. I will, first of all, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a quick roll call with Duke and I already accounted for. Randy?
Approved.
Approved. Nick Rongo?
Approve.
Katie Lublin? Katie, are you with us?
Approve.
Thank you. Rusty?
Approved.
Sean?
Approved.
John Zagrodsky?
Approved.
Mike Alfieri?
Approve.
And Diane Boston?
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. The adjustment is approved by the committee. This is the discussion of the calendar of schedule of regulatory approvals. I believe that the very first slide of the presentation being made today covers it, and I'd like to have Randy and Amy speak to that, please.
Kip, if I could interrupt, this is Jeremy Ginsburg. I just wanted to note that I'm on the line and can, if I can answer any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's great.
Thanks, Jeremy, for calling in.
Sure.
And what I'll provide is a recap of a update conversation that I had with Jeremy, so which we had yesterday. Going through, not on the screen here, but I thought it's worth mentioning just a quick note about the traffic study. The traffic study by Bond has been completed and submitted to planning and zoning, and that is under peer review by the consultant engaged by planning and zoning at this time. So we'll wait to hear feedback to that study, Jeremy, and you can, when I finish my comments, if you could just provide with a status update of that process, that would be great. The OSTA submission to the DOT also took place around a week ago. The only, I think, other than peer review comments and reconciliation, when it comes to the traffic study, would be any new inputs that would be needed to Tig and Bond to any potential changes to the site plan for parking and any access traffic volumes due to staffing or any type of changes that could come about with regards to that. Moving to the regulatory approvals, let's start with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and if David Gonzalez is on, I think you should take note here, because what I'm about to go through, there are some specific changes to what I saw on the last version of the project schedule. Prior for ZBA, I noted in the schedule it looked like a meeting date of April 22nd. He advised me yesterday that that is highly likely that meeting is highly likely not to take place on the 22nd and would be likely kicked out to May 20th. And I'll speak to P&Z meetings in a moment, but that would be after the planned P&Z meeting date, and Jeremy's indicated that that's okay, that the P&Z review could be conditional to ZBA review, and it need not go in a particular order with regards to this particular project. So I show May 20th for that, and in terms of the submission, SLAM has already submitted all the necessary documents for that particular approval. The next would be the Architectural Review Board. Current schedule showed a meeting date of April 21st. The documents due on the 7th. Jeremy informed me yesterday that also is likely to be postponed, and indicated a date of May 19th, Tuesday, May 19th, I believe, for a potential meeting there. We also then discussed, though, however, and Jeremy can add to this when I'm finished, of the potential, if we're ready, to send forth documentation, though, earlier than that, and begin to have members of that board review it and provide feedback well in advance of that potential meeting. And that could be done in an electronic format, so Jeremy can expand on that. But that was what was relayed to me as a potential kickout date to May 19th for ARB. And then lastly, for P&Z, original schedule had us for the first meeting of April 28th, and the new target first meeting would be May 12th. That would be pushed out a few weeks. We would be the only agenda item for that meeting, so we could have a very lengthy discussion. It would be a virtual meeting. All of these meetings, I imagine, would be at this stage assumed to be virtual.
Yeah.
So May 12th, follow-on meetings potentially rolling 1 week thereafter for each of those as needed or necessary by P&Z. So the potential second meeting on the 19th, and if needed, a third meeting on the 26th. So that is the notes that I would provide to the committee, and I'll pause there and let Jeremy clarify anything that I left out or got wrong.
No, I think you got it all correct there, Randy. It's complex to begin with, and the whole virus thing has made it a little trickier, but the dates seem to be correct. P&Z May 12th, if we can get through it that night, one night, that'll be great. If not, we've set aside subsequent hearing nights on the 19th and or the 26th, depending on what questions come up at that first meeting, with hopefully a likely P&Z decision, all goes well, May 26th or June 2nd, somewhere around there. Still, hopefully keeping everything on schedule.
Although we're sad to see these things be pushed out because of the current circumstances, having approval in early June still meets the target schedule for state approval in July. So still on target.
Yeah, getting tighter, but on target. And I think that's the key, is pushing ZBA and ARB to May. Hopefully that those are one night, get them in and out in one night type meetings. But that's what I suggested to Randy, is the sooner you can get the ARB stuff to us, maybe next week, Amy, we can at least start getting it out to ARB members which would allow for possibly, hopefully, some early feedback in April, comments and things we can do, try to get things moving along before the meeting, and also to give you whatever feedback or input, which might allow some changes even before you get into the meeting.
Hi, hi, this is Diane. I had a quick comment. So these May approvals then are going to push back the date for our next meeting with the state for their approvals. And I assume, Amy, based on your comment, that that's not a concern. As of now, as our last conversation with them, we talked about meeting at the very beginning of May. So they want to see town approvals before we speak with them. So that's going to the approval process with them and yet not impact the project.
So
schedule.
that's two different meetings with the state, Diane. The meetings that we'd like to go to for the state next month are the DDR, which is approval of the design development, the package that we're sharing today, and the PCR for the enabling phase. Both of those can still happen prior to the regulatory approvals that were just discussed. The enabling phase has already received approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so we're all set to go to the state with that. And the DDR is a result of the design development, which is what we're reviewing today and what we will review one more time after the budgets are complete. So the next round of meetings with the state impacted. The regulatory that happens to allow us to go to the state for the PCR, which is the final completion, plan completion review, that's still fine for July.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, our next item of business, and thank you, Jeremy, for providing the clarification.
Sure
The
thing.
next order of business is to talk about new project schedule, the most updated one. I'm sorry, there's feedback coming on. It was developed by David Cravanzola of ONG in conjunction with SLAM and everybody else. And I just wanted to give a chance to talk about it. I think his email, which I sent to all the committee, points out the 4 key changes and inclusions. But David, I'll give you the microphone.
Sure. Thanks, Kip. Amy, I see you have it up on the screen. So we could, if you want, I could share my screen so I can navigate from there, or you can just navigate as I talk. But the main points of this schedule are that we have updated the town approval process, which, Randy, I understand that some of those dates are going to move. But as we work through the approval process and how the regulatory approvals are geared towards getting approval from OSCGR to bid, as was said, where we are with the revised meetings is still not going to affect our schedule for going to bid. And we are still, if we go to let me see, which is the first page here of note, really the main thing there is just, what we're looking at for approvals. We started the design development estimate. This week, we received the design development package from the design team. So we are working on that, and we are targeting completing our estimate around the 21st of April. And at that point, that's when we're going to be doing estimate reconciliation like we did in the schematic design. Ourselves to, as Amy said, both the design and the estimates for that to both the Board of Education and the Building Committee at the end of April. And while the Board of Ed has a scheduled meeting for the end of April, right now the Building Committee does not. So that's one of the special meetings that we would be looking to have called so that we can compile all the necessary approvals that we need to be ready for our early May meetings with OSCG&R, both for PCR for phase 1, so we can get approval to bid, and for the DDR so that we can gain acceptance of design development. Moving on to Of note, if we go to the second page, I'm just looking at items of note there. We've spent some time with SLAM going through the construction documents phase and really the important chain of events that have to take place there to be ready for our PCR with the state in July. And right now we're tracking to that schedule. And I think now with some of these approvals that were granted today with the local review, that those will be in place in plenty of time. The traffic, we are on track with traffic with the submission that was made of the traffic study. And again, I think there's been a lot of due diligence done in the owner's camp as far as preparing for the traffic submission. So I don't see any items of concern there. Relative to actual starting of work for phase one, we are looking for, Amy, if you could go to the next page. Yeah. I think it's page, yep, page 3, right there for phase one bidding and award. Right now, we're looking at going out to bid starting the middle of May. And at this point, we're looking at, we would be able to mobilize on site at this point now, probably the 3rd week of June. Now, I don't know if, I don't know to what level of certainty the end of school for Darien Public Schools is this year, given the current situation, but we're generally on track there as far as being able to start work once school is out for the year.
June 11th is the current date.
June 11th.
We
okay.
voted, this is Duke. We voted at the last Board of Ed meeting that graduation date, we had to set it, and last day of school will be Thursday, June 11th. We also canceled the April break other than 2 days, a Friday and Monday, to give kind of a long weekend. We don't think the state will come back to us. They've waived the 180-day requirement. If we had to pick up a day or two, we would do it that Friday and Monday, but it doesn't look that way. So June 11th looks like a solid date right now.
Well, I certainly for to move out of the school and get ready so that we can come in there the 3rd, the last week of June, and start our phase one work.
That's great, David. Do you have anything else you want to add? A very good summary.
The only thing is, Amy, if you could scroll back up to the very first page, I thought there was not that it's important right now, but the one thing that is going to be coming up relatively soon, just to put it on the radar, is that the building committee is going to have to solicit for a testing agency sometime before phase. I don't know if we're going to need it for phase one at all.
We will need it for phase one.
We are?
This is Kemp. We will need it for phase one because we do have some new concrete and structural walls being placed. Okay.
All right. So then, we're showing that by the, over the course of the next, we probably have 3 to 4 weeks if we could get an RFP out to testing agencies and solicit pricing so that over the course of, by the middle of June, really, that we have someone under contract that can be there for inspections on site.
Okay, so will you give us the details on that? Just send the details down to myself and Duke, and we'll get it over to Kate Bush to put out on a RFP.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for David concerning our schedule, which has always been tight, but getting tighter? All right. That sort of concludes the early part of our meeting. Now we're going to go into basically the design development presentation. This will primarily be given by SLAM. And for those of you not familiar, there's Kemp Mordart involved, Amy Samuelson, Dean Ober, Amanda Hastings, and Jessica Petro, all from SLAM, who will be presenting at different parts of this particular presentation. It's all yours, guys.
All right, thank you, Kip. This is Kemp. Well, let me start by saying congratulations on finding a way to conduct your meeting virtually in our new normal, at least for the time being. We're happy to have helped facilitate that with the Teams platform. We're very pleased to be here today to present to you our DD package as presented in the estimating package that was submitted to the estimators earlier this week. Our agenda for today, we're going to go through, we're going to just touch on the 100% DD package and what it looks like as far as the actual documents that were prepared. We're going to revisit our project goals just to make sure that everybody on the committee understands how the current design is addressing the goals that we set up at the beginning of the project prior to programming and during programming. Jessica and Amy and Dean are going to work through the site work and exterior design component. We have some new renderings that have been developed from the Revit model, which is our current three-dimensional computer model of the entire project. And then Amanda will go through the interior design. We have some plans and images, Amanda and Amy as well, I believe. And then Amy's going to review the enabling phase, just so there's a clear understanding of how the enabling phase will be conducted. And we've already gone through the regulatory approval schedule, so that will fall off the agenda. You could advance, Amy. So just to give the committee a visual of what has been prepared over the past 10 weeks of time since the beginning of the year, 10 to 12 weeks, I guess it was. Our DD package consists of 2 sets of documents, and we've broken it down into 2 phases. As you know, the enabling phase is phase 1, and as was discussed earlier in this meeting, the phases have been clarified with the State Office of School Construction Grants to be phase 1 for the enabling work, which is the partial demolition and abatement of a portion of the existing building, some modifications within that building, and then the addition of a portable classroom for the library component moving during construction. Amy will talk in more detail about that later on in the presentation. And then, of course, phase 2 is the full site and building construction for the project. And that is the larger of the 2 packages. You can see on the bottom, 348 sheets of documents to document all of that work. It's a substantial package and should have substantial detail and sufficient detail for the estimators to get a very clear picture of the cost of the project. In addition to the drawings, we also have project manual volumes, as we call them, that contain all the technical specifications for all the products designed for the project. Hopefully that's not me.
Did someone your phone or whatever?
I think someone put us on hold, so I don't know if they can hear us, but whoever put us on hold, you need to switch to putting us on mute.
I believe that could be the first selectman.
I can mute that person. Hold on. I don't know what phone number it is to mute.
856. I'll give you the number in just a second.
Okay. Oh, 656?
1656. Hold on just a minute. Hold up.
Oh,
I got it. I muted him. All right, thanks for that. That was helpful. Okay, so just wanted to finish up on this. So it was a substantial package of information that will be estimated, and we'll be able to hone in on the costs at a detailed level. So
Kemp, I would just like to add that the 3 volumes consist of 2,246 pages, and with 348 drawings. I challenge anybody to get through this shortly. Thank you.
Sure. To that point, Kip, one thing that our team would be looking for, I agree, and we don't necessarily expect you to go through the full project manual. That's a lot of technical data that you probably don't need to wade through. However, the drawings, we would look to the committee to assign someone in the district to someone or maybe a small group within the district to review that set of documents to make sure that it's consistent with everything they expect. And we can conduct a page turn if that's more helpful, another virtual meeting where we can flip through the documents and give the highlights to make sure that the committee and the town officials or town representatives that have an interest in what the documents include understand what's in there and have a means to give us some feedback on that.
And what time frame do you need on that type of review?
Typically, that occurs during the estimating period. So it's about a 4-week estimating period. So over the next 4 weeks, if we can conduct that type of review and feedback loop, that would be helpful.
Okay.
That way we can.
Okay, thank you.
We can address. Sure. All right, Amy, you want to go to the next slide? And as we've done in all the phases, milestone phases over the course of the project, we always want to revisit our project goals that we established early on to make sure that we are in fact addressing those goals. And on the left side of the slide are the 4 primary goals that we've established, and then on the right-hand side are some key points on how the design is addressing those goals. So I'm not going to read through all the detail. We've highlighted a few things just to kind of make this more brief. But first goal was to create a vibrant and inviting building to gather students, family, and the Darien community. Among the other items listed to the right, some of the key ones, the plan allows for the separation between public and academic spaces, and the very dynamic courtyard that we've developed with the amphitheater aspect, a real important and kind of heart of the school, and you'll see that in the images yet to come in the presentation. We feel that the design of this building is just really top-notch, and we're very excited as a design team to see this come to fruition. The second goal was create a system of dynamic learning environments that engages each learner type. Working with the committee and the administration, we've identified this learning corridor space concept, which is developed for flexible teaching areas and independent learners, and that's outside of the classroom. However, it's incorporated into the classroom pod design, which you'll see again in the future portion of this presentation. But we feel that that's going to provide just a tremendous amount of flexibility for curriculum as the building lives its life over the next 50 to 75 years. And that library media center designed to incorporate principles of your library reimagined document that is currently being worked on for other schools has all been incorporated into this design. Sustainable measures that meet or exceed the Connecticut High Performance Building Standards. We have been working with our energy modeler and as a team to provide a very energy efficient project. We are currently working toward a net zero goal. as you might imagine, achieving net zero is a difficult task, but we are very close as far as developing what's known as an energy use intensity, and it's a measure of how many BTUs per square foot consumes, and we're down in the neighborhood of 33 to 35, and the baseline for a typical project like this would be around 48 to 50. So we are feeling very good about where we are from an energy and sustainable design perspective. In addition to energy performance, and there are a lot of other sustainable aspects of the design, just building the design into nature, and the way the site has developed. The site design is also a testament to its sustainable feature. And Amy's going to go through in a little bit the PV panels on the roof, so that energy use intensity I mentioned a minute ago can be offset by on-site power generation from a rooftop photovoltaic array. And so that will help us drive the operational costs even lower than that 35 EUI that I mentioned. So we're excited about that as well. And then finally, the develop learning environments that support active learning. We had a lot of conversation with the committee over the past 8 months with the size of classroom and incorporation of technology and use of flexible furniture, and you'll see that in the plans and layouts shortly. We're confident that that's going to provide a much larger size classroom from what you're experiencing today in Oxbridge, properly sized to support that active learning environment moving forward. And then there's also that key space of the exploration zone in the learning library media center that is also a very dynamic space. So I think that's, we are confident that we've addressed the goals and exceeded the goals in our opinion. And so we're very excited about the design. Any questions on the goals before we move on? All right, so I'll turn it over to Dean and Jessica and Amy to go through the site work and exterior design.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning. I'm going to give just a quick overview of our site plan and just kind of walk everyone through the entrance drive coming off of Mansfield Avenue in our upper right-hand corner. Comes into the site into initially the same alignment of an upper parking lot and grading. And then we do have the lower parking lot, which has the 64 parking spaces. So within that upper parking lot where we say 58 parking spaces, we've got our main entrance, as well as the ELP wing and playground to the right. Moving down to the main lower parking lot that has the 64 parking spaces, we have a continual bus loop that goes around, as well as having that drop off in the assembly wing at the gym. You'll see an area noted also called service, where we have our loading dock area, fully enclosed and screened. And then on the opposite side, we're calling that our cafeteria, kitchen, and terrace, as well as spill out space. And we'll have a rendering of this area looking back from the spill out space to the cafe and kitchen area. So you'll see that. We have an accessible circulation from this assembly wing down to that grade K5 playground, which you'll see some images of those playgrounds, which have not been reviewed yet with the design team, but they've been incorporated in our 100% DD document. So we wanted to show some images of that area. And then moving around the back, west and south side of the building, our academic pods will have additional images of that, which will then pull you back up through the ELP. And then the last two images will be within that center courtyard space.
Thanks, Jess. This is Amy. I'm going to run through the roof plan. orientation of the building on this slide is the same as you just saw in the site plan. And the intent of this is to share with the committee of PV panels. The amount shown currently represents about 300 kilowatts of power. We are going to work with CES to see if we can put even more panels on the building. Right now, they're looking, the shadows that you see on the screen actually are morning shadows, the sun coming from the east. Knowing that the sun coming from the west and south will change the shadow line to this area. You can see that there's been some areas of shadow that the panels do not exist in currently, but we're going to work with them to see if we can add even more. I've highlighted in a little bit of a yellowish color the roof screens that we have located on the building strategically to hide many of the mechanical units. Some of the mechanical units that are on the classroom pods, especially on the west, we've checked the viewing angles and there's really not a need from the property line or from the open space to have roof screens in those areas. But we've maintained the roof screens so that someone driving in from the main entrance or the Mansfield Avenue side and neighbors on the Mansfield Avenue edge, as well as on the south edge of the property, those mechanical units are screened. Are there any questions on the roof plan? Okay. So Dean, I'll ask that you start to go through the renderings. And Jessica, if you need to jump in and explain anything about the site on each of the renderings, that would be great.
Can you hear me?
If you can get closer to the mic, we can just barely hear you, Dean.
I'm going to turn up my volume here. There you go. Is that better?
Not really.
Hold on 1 second. Any better now?
Can the committee hear Dean?
Not really.
No.
It's very, very faint.
Very faint.
No.
Okay, I'll run through the slides then. So this is a great image of your view when you enter from the Mansfield Avenue driveway, and there's a left-hand turn that can bring you into the parking lot before the loop for parent drop-off. That's where this image is taken from.
If I could just add, like Amy said, this is Jessica, where we're taking this image is essentially the same existing condition entering into your site where you come down that entrance drive, same grading, and you then are entered in at that bus loop. So we're having that same experience when we come down from the entrance drive to this point.
That's a good point, Jessica. I think if you can share with the committee that the work that you've done lately to meet the current grading and to respect the shoulders along the driveway and some of the neighboring properties.
Yes, we've been looking at the grading and really tightening up those grades to preserve majority of the trees along the edge of all the neighbors and respecting that buffer condition. And by meeting those existing grades in the shoulders of the drive, that minimizes any sort of regrading and obviously doesn't impact the trees. So that's what we've been looking at, tightening up grades. Where Amy's showing you the cursor on the entrance drive, we're meeting the same existing grades coming into the entrance drive, so we're not regrading or changing the shoulder and tree removal of that area.
Thanks, Jess. Moving ahead, as you enter the site and you come around the parent drop-off loop, this is the view of the main entrance. As you might recall, we've removed a canopy that was previously along the edge of the administration wing, which is to the right in this image. And we think that it's really opened up the view to the entrance and allows you to highlight the view of the entrance and really see into and through the building toward the courtyard. On your left on this image is the administration for the ELP, and on the right is the administration for the elementary school, both allowing for excellent views and security guidelines, which recommend that there's good views of the entrance from those admin offices. Any questions on this view? So moving on. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add something with regards to site. As you had noted about both admin areas, we've had low planting, which creates a separation between circulation and obviously the building, but they will be low, so they won't be covering the sills, as well as we're showing those security bollards in the front, which are like a cube, a low cube bollard, so that you have that security, but it still is welcoming and inviting for the front entrance.
Thanks, Jess. I forgot to point out those. That's great. And here's a view of the bus loop. I think that you can get an idea of the expanse of crosswalk that will.
I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but my screen is still on the main entrance.
Mine is also.
Agreed.
Okay, it must have frozen. Hold on. Maybe I'll exit the slideshow, start it over.
Does this mean we'll always have the weather that's shown?
Can't promise that.
Only if you get a bond issue shortly, John.
Okay, sold.
If you have problems with it, I can take control, and I have the presentation on my computer, and we can continue if necessary.
Sure. So does that mean you still are seeing the same image?
I am.
Okay, because I've already closed and reopened PowerPoint. So I think maybe I'll just need to stop sharing. I wonder if I share again, if that works.
You can try that. In the meantime, I'll open up the file.
Someone needs to mute. Are you seeing the bus entry at this point?
Nothing.
I see your face, but it may be coming.
It just has your initials on it right now, Amy.
Okay. Well, let's not waste any more time. Kemp, why don't I'll unshare.
I will request control, and then I will share.
Right now, I don't think anyone is sharing.
Okay. Can everybody see
go.
the main entrance again?
Yes.
All right.
You see the main
I'm
entrance
gonna-
count.
Yeah, Okay, so we're going to move on to the bus entry. Now everybody see that?
Yes.
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 Okay. Continue on, team.
Okay, so at the bus entry, this view allows you to see the width of entry doors available as students could come in, and actually, more importantly, exit through these doors. It also allows for a generous occupancy load to go in and out to the public spaces that are within the gymnasium. To the left in this image and to the right in this image is the kitchen. No windows except for one window far right, which is in the office of the food service manager. The brick is shown in an ombre. You can see that at the bottom there's the dark gray brick. It's an iron ore stained brick, and at the top is the red brick. Those are the two brick colors that you'll see elsewhere on the building as we move around to the classrooms and ELP. We've maintained a long canopy on that bus loop. I think it's a good place for people to gather if they need to in poor weather. I think you can move on, Kemp. Thanks.
Right. And one more comment on the canopy along the bus lane. We have, since earlier renditions, we've reduced the quantity of columns along that edge. So, changed the canopy to be a single row of columns toward the back side of the canopy, so that the front side, as you approach from the bus lane and the sidewalk, is free and clear of columns, which I think is an improvement as you come down into the main entry. Another key point to note is the blue element, which you can't really see the box shape from this particular view, but this is kind of an element that could be a seating area. The blue color designates entry, similar to the blue portal at the main entrance. Dean has designed in some sort of blue element at each entry point to signify entrance, and it's Darien blue.
Hey, Kemp, it's Duke. Is there any requirement, or will it come up in a security conversation about ballards down at that area too, where students are standing, just to protect from a bus jumping a curb or someone in a personal car?
We can certainly look into that. There are steel columns that are protecting this entrance. There are 4 columns.
Right, I'm thinking where the second bus is to the left. That's a long stance there of kids standing there, and it might be something we have to think about.
Yep, we should consider potentially putting some of those bollards there. It's a good comment. Hopefully I can advance. All right. So the next view is the cafeteria and spill out space that you saw earlier. I'll let Jessica talk a little bit more about this, but you can see that the main cafeteria volume with the metal panel is the primary feature on this facade, where we have about a 6-foot understory, creating a bit of a canopy for not only for sun shading, but also for cover from the weather. And we have a smaller entrance element here, again with a blue column on this entrance to signify entry, and the small set of concave stairs that can serve as a small outdoor classroom and amphitheater type seating, or just be an area where students, if they were coming out to eat their lunch, they could sit on the steps as opposed to a picnic table up on the patio area. I'll turn it over to Jess to talk about some of the site features here.
Thanks, Kemp. So just to add to some of the things you said from a site perspective, what you're seeing on the upper walk that looks like a low grass, that's a cedar fence. That is that programming that the school currently has is of the raised beds and planters, and we've cited that within here for this. Let me just mute for one. So if everyone can hear me, we've cited that in conjunction, adjacent to the cafeteria. We think that's a good positioning and teaching area, as well as it has the same orientation of the current plant beds for sun orientation for growing. We also now, if you look at the upper right hand where we have the little bubble showing that plan, you can see that from the assembly wing down into where the playground is, that is an ADA path, and there's like a switchback path down the slope that leads into the playground. So we've eliminated, at one time there were some stairs along that path from the assembly wing. Those are now gone, and you have a continual sloped transition down into the playground area. I think that's it from the site.
Looks good.
Thank you, Jess. Moving on to the classroom pods on the southwestern corner. This is a view taken from approximately on the property line, where you have the 3, 1 kind of off in the distance here, 2 right in your prominent view, and then 3, the 3 wings of the elementary school, the K through 5 wings, as you come around the back side of the building, and then as you transfer up around to the east, this access drive starts to slope up, which you'll see in the next view. But it's a very simple brick facade that has been developed over the course of design development, and I think Dean has done a great job with detailing the brickwork, which we're still working on getting the imagery to kind of render those reset bricks, the ones that are prominent. So it's a bit of a ribbed approach, but it will be helping to break down that scale. And then we have the inset of the dark gray brick for each of the classrooms. So each one of these vertical bays represents a stacked classroom arrangement. Each classroom has a pair of windows and a single. And we are also utilizing the sunshades to address some of the direct sun that would otherwise come into the space, and it also uses it as a light shelf within the classroom itself to diffuse that light deep into the classroom space. And a little further beyond, you can see the assembly wing down the far end. Anything with regard to site on this, Jess?
Nope, not on this one.
Okay. So moving further to the east, coming back up the hill, you can see that the way the building has been nestled into this natural slope of the existing site. And this is really where the transition occurs from the lower level, where you have a 2-story facade, to the upper level and coming around to the ELP wing, where you have a 1-story building. This wall transitions that grade, and it's just gently graded down around. You can see an entrance walkway here. It's more of an egress walk than an entrance walk. It's really not an entrance point, but it is an egress point to a public way on this side from that lowest level in that lower corner. From earlier renditions, we've pulled that wall back to allow natural light to get deep into the more easily get into that area, and did a nice gentle curve to that wall with a guardrail at the top. And then this point on the upper level is also an egress point from that knuckle between the ELP and the K5 wing. You'll see that in more detail in the plans when we go through the plans. And then you can also see how the roof screens that Amy mentioned earlier come into play with the composition of the facade, and help screen those pieces of equipment from view on this side. Jessica, anything on the site here?
No, I feel like you covered it well of showing the grading and the tying back to the site. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Kemp, could you stay on that for a second, please? It's Randy.
Sure.
Can you speak to the allowable building height on this design and where this current design stands versus that max zoning height? Does anyone on the line know that calc offhand? How much wiggle room there is in between those two metrics?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the exact numbers in my head, but with the MU zone, we have the ability to go, I believe it's up to 40 feet, and the current facade here is approximately 34 feet from grade.
And it goes from the parapet wall, not from the top of those enclosures up on the top of the roof there?
Correct. You're allowed, the zoning regs allow you to have roof screens outside of that height limitation, so long as they have a couple parameters that you need to be within. I think it's like 15% of the roof area maximum, and only to the high part of the equipment itself. But there are special provisions.
Given the clearance there, could you just speak to the thought process behind what looks to be, such a deep cut here, to accommodate the walkout lower level, from a soil, grading cost perspective, overall, project perspective, to essentially dig down as opposed to up, or using more of that height potential. Like, just as a reminder of the thought process behind that, I think will be helpful.
Sure. The way that the plan developed was to use the natural topography of the site to our advantage, where, yes, you see the natural transition occurring primarily in this corner. However, if you were to look at the existing site from the eastern edge and then across to the western edge by the open space, in the area of the open space currently, there is about a 12-foot elevation change from those two edges. And so we utilize that to our advantage. We do have a 14-foot floor-to-floor elevation in the building. So by having the walkout for the lower level occur primarily on the western edge, and yes, it does come around and resolve itself in this corner, we were able to balance the cut and fill for that transition and nestle the building into the site that way.
Was that all used with an optimizer, in terms of cut and fill?
Yes, we worked during schematic design. We worked with O&G, who modeled the cut and fill with their program, and in early schematic we were a little out of balance, and by making some subtle adjustments to the elevations of the building floors and other adjustments on site, we were able to get the site to be at a balanced situation or very close to it.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask next. Was there a net export or import of soil? You're saying it's balanced. Okay. And then what about erosion control on that southern edge there? That looks to be a pretty steep. Any concerns there or mitigants on how that would be handled?
I'm going to defer that one to Jessica.
It might be helpful to go back to the site plan for her to give a proper explanation, Kemp.
Sure.
Jess, can you talk a little bit with how you've worked with Will Walter and his team on the stormwater?
Sure. So I think this image works well as then going back to that rendered view. So on the south side, you're correct to notice that there is a cut along this border, which then obviously nestles the building mass deeper into the site from visibility. But from that southern border to our finished floor elevation, there is going to be a cut. So what we've done is shown a seeded slope condition, not lawn, but a seeded woodland condition. And then at the bottom of that slope, we have a continual swale along the drive. So you have a shoulder for drainage. And then Will has drains along that edge where you're seeing that cursor go, that's picking up the water that comes down at that shoulder. And then if we go back to the rendered image, I think that you'll be able to see that and how we've textured the slope there. So you can see that you're reading that tree woodline at the top of the slope. There's a perimeter fence. We're showing an underplanting of some low evergreen shrubs to help with that under canopy of the existing tree line for additional screening. And then we have a seeded slope where you're seeing that cursor, and then you can see how the ground plane changes a little bit to that pale green. That's implying the lawn shoulder for mow edge.
So then it just becomes a maintenance issue on drainage, clogging and things like that.
Well, we have, I think there are yard drains in this area. You can see that this is kind of a low spot on this side, and then it's all piped into the stormwater management system. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on this view?
You might touch on the railing that was shown there, Kemp. Sorry.
Sure.
This is the first of the rendered images where you can see that railing, but it's a system brand name called Bach Modern. It's a metal railing system that we are proposing to use both indoor and outdoor here. There's a couple of different patterns that we can choose from. This one harkens to a child's scribble drawing, and so I think that if I'm speaking for Dean, that was his intention here. But it's a heavy-duty metal guardrail that can be incorporated both indoors and outdoors. In this case, providing protection from fall for the exit on the main level on that retaining wall. And it shows up again in the courtyard and also at the main stair inside the building.
Thanks for that bit of information, Amy. That's a good point. Trying to tie all of that together using a similar railing product. Moving down a little bit on the east side is the remaining portion of the ELP wing. And you can start to get a glimpse of how the playground integrates with that area. This is what I'll call the exit point or the discharge point for the ELP students from the ELP Commons, which is behind this zone of the building. So students will enter through the main entrance of the building that you saw earlier, and then they will be discharged through this set of doors to go and be picked up. That was the intent of the design. You can see from our earlier rendition, we've changed the facade of this building a little bit to be a little bit more reminiscent of what we're doing on the backside of the building and try and tie the design of the building together as a whole. This is, slightly different in the sense that we have these bay window elements, and these were intentionally designed. Otherwise would be a very long, monotonous facade, and try and establish some rhythm there, as well as each one of these classrooms has what we call a bay window pod and the windows associated next to it. So you can kind of identify that grouping of architectural elements as a classroom. So you've got 5 classrooms on this side. On the flip side of the corridor that are open to the courtyard, they are similarly detailed but they do not have these bay window elements. Jesse, you want to talk a little bit about the playground?
Sure, and we'll have a couple of additional images at the end that just touch upon this. So like we said, we hadn't shown this yet to the design team, review team, but this is what we have put in our documents. We wanted to show that. You'll see some of the play of the surfacing of color. That's a rubberized surface underneath the different play zones. And then we also have the adjacent pavement, which doubles as additional space for the kids, where you see the chalk rendering, our chalk in our rendering. So I think when we move forward, we'll see the play space a little bit better identified.
My question on that
Yeah,
area is that. Sorry, Randy here. Is that area under review for parking use?
This area here?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a study going on about potential increase in stalls. Is this under consideration or not?
No.
This area is not, but this area is a drivable pavement section for a fire truck to gain access to approximately this point here, which was done intentionally. But you can also see the bollards, these blue bollards in the distance here that are removable bollards in an emergency situation, so a fire truck can access that point to that point. But otherwise, it is blocked off from traffic through the bollards.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Adley. How are you?
Well, thank you. I just a quick question here about that fencing around the playscape. It's just this model just doesn't show it, or like.
Yes, I think that's the case. We omitted it for clarity.
Okay,
we
all right.
intend to have a fence around the playscape.
Right. I mean, I think it's actually required for the kids and stuff, that grade level. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I noticed that myself. I was going to bring it up. Thank you for bringing that up. Unless there are other questions about ELP on the other side, I'm going to move on in the interest of time. So moving into the courtyard, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're really excited about this courtyard, and to Nick's comment earlier about cut and fill, part of the design of the school was to utilize that change in slope, or that change in elevation from east to west side, and basically celebrate it and take advantage of it in what would be a pretty substantial courtyard design. You can see this edge of the building up here is the ELP wing. This element here is the other side of that ELP Commons that has a nice glassed opening to the courtyard. And you have a set of doors here that comes down and is in alignment with a set of steps that come right down, and then is also in alignment with another set of doors right off the page here that go into the lower level of the K5 wing. You can see it's a very vibrant space with a large paved area toward the bottom with these seating steps, call them amphitheater type seating steps, that marry up to the person steps over here on, I think it's every 2 feet. These are 2 foot high elements, and they're concrete block, unit type block retaining walls, elements that have grass in between, and you can sit on them as a bench. So you can imagine that you could have at least one, if not more than one class out here in a seated arrangement with some sort of presentation or outdoor curriculum exercise going on down on the flat. And it helps to mitigate the 14 feet floor to floor that we have from the single story ELP wing to the 2-story K5 wing. Looking a little bit further into the image, you can see that we are retaining with again, another concrete unit block wall here in the back, There's a notion of a outdoor chalkboard over here because there's another outdoor classroom area off of the art room, which is further down in the plan. And again, that is mitigating the 14 feet difference from here to here. We have a different view. This wall is about 10 feet high because we are sloping the grade up above to try and minimize the height of this wall. We didn't want it to be the full 14 feet. And Jess, you want to talk a little bit about the right-hand side and the more natural aspect of the design?
Sure, absolutely. So you'll see, as Kemp noted, to the right of the seat walls, you're reading more of like a dry stream bed that has some aggregate, just larger riverjack stones, a little bit of boulders to aid in grade, as well as naturalistic planting. So we see that's a good opportunity to express just a different texture and drainage within this site. So it just becomes like a dry riverbed, whereas you see on the bottom right-hand part of the image, it looks like it's boardwalk decking. So where the water kind of comes down just from being collected in all the roof leaders, but just naturally going down the slope from if there was a rainfall, you'll see the water go down along this dry river stream bed, and then you'll be able to cross it on this boardwalk decking. So we're trying to show this courtyard as being a system, a bunch of different site systems with drainage, natural planting that becomes a teaching tool utilizing natives within this space. And then, as Kemp noted, the blackboard on that upper portion has some other opportunities with sloped lawn for seating around that. And in our next view, you'll be able to see that lower area also.
So this is a view from the upper level, and this would be the flat area or level area that's just outside of the main entrance lobby. And you can see the indication of that same railing system that Amy pointed out earlier on the ELP wall is brought into this area as well for a guardrail. And you're overlooking that lower classroom area that's just outside the art room on the lower level. And then you see another bridge element here, as Jess just mentioned, that those bridge elements bridge over the lower portion of the rain garden that accumulates any stormwater that will fall into this space and directs it to a point where it then gets routed into the overall site stormwater management system. Jessica's done a great job of making this slope be much more gentle than earlier renditions of the concept. And then you also have the sidewalk along the upper edge, and you have ELP classrooms on this edge as well, with the commons element in the end.
This is Amy. I think that this is a better view of the brick elements on the building. You get a sense of the color of the gray brick and the red brick. Unfortunately, the soldier course looks like it looks a little bit more red than the remainder. That's not the case. It'll be the same brick, just standing vertical rather than horizontal. But I do think that this is a good view where you can see all of the materials of the building coming together quite nicely.
How do you feel about turf, synthetic turf usage here, just given the heavy usage, lower sunlight, difficulty in maintenance? I know that that's not a very popular product for a lot of people, but have you given that any thought?
We have not considered that as an option, but done that in the past, more for playground areas rather than a courtyard, but it could be considered. It does come with a little bit higher cost, however, than the natural turf.
Hi, this is Diane. I would say that the natural grass and garden is sort of critical to, the design of the courtyard and the water collection aspects and whatnot, maybe for consideration elsewhere and more heavily used play areas. But I would think that this being a really natural grown space is kind of integral to the design, in my opinion.
I hear you, but this is just coming from someone who maintains a lawn. It ain't easy.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, we do have just underneath this set of windows in this view, there's a outdoor maintenance equipment room that is accessible from the courtyard. And in talking with Mike Lynch, they would be able to store maintenance equipment in there to maintain the courtyard. And it's, from what I understand, they use all electric tools, so there's little concern over emissions interfering with student activities in this space.
And if I can also add to that, with the grading of these larger slopes, we've maintained a grade that is safe for lawn maintenance of a 3-to-1 slope in this larger foreground that you're seeing. And then have been working with our planting plan and creating easily discernible areas of maintenance for lawn versus plant beds. And then when we address plant beds, we'll be working with native plant beds in groupings to minimize kind of garden-esque approach of maintenance. So we've been looking into that, of making this but also easy to maintain.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on this view? All right, we'll move on. So the final view of the courtyard, basically this is from the upper flat area against the ELP, looking back toward the main entrance lobby and the vestibule from the courtyard into that lobby. And so our previous view was from standing approximately over here, looking down and across. This is just looking back to show you the full aspect of the courtyard and how it intersects with the main entrance lobby.
I think this is a nice view, or it was a nice view of the entrance, and the fact that there's sort of a glowing possibility, if you can imagine this at night or basically a winter afternoon when the sun is down early. The entry lobby will really read as a beacon, and you'll be able to see it both from the entrance side, parent loop, and parking area, as well as this side.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also this helps to reinforce the concept that Amy mentioned earlier about seeing through the main entrance into the courtyard and vice versa. You can see from the courtyard through the main entrance out to the site beyond. So there's a great transparency, and that was intentionally designed that way because the courtyard is such a major element of this building. We want to celebrate as we walk in. Yes.
Cam, could you just, maybe you guys have done this before I jumped on. Could you just talk to what that railing actually looks like since the kid's about to jump over it?
Yeah, it's probably a poorly placed figure.
Well, actually,
this is a.
Go ahead. What actually is happening here?
So we have a sidewalk,
yeah.
And then I believe we've got a shoulder, like a grass shoulder, and then this is a 42-inch high, or even a 48-inch high. I think it may be on the higher side. Steel guardrail, but it's a cut plate steel, so it has the pattern in it.
Oh, this actually is a pattern. Okay.
Yeah, that's a pattern that's cut through the steel, so think of that as a piece of perforated steel that has that cut pattern to it. And then there are ribs about every 5 feet, I believe, where there's a post. And so it's a solid rail, Dr. Adley. It's essentially a strong fence guardrail.
And the height is what?
I believe we have it as 4 feet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the rendering is showing it quite accurately. The intent is either a 42-inch guardrail, which is the code required height, or we can extend it to 48 inches. The railing itself, the pattern looks to me to be rendered a little bit wider than it really is. The requirement for code and the actual pattern of the railing is that there's a maximum of 4.5-inch spacing in any opening of a railing. And so where it looks like there's maybe wide openings along this railing, I think that it actually meets code requirement of not greater than 4.5 inches.
If I can also add, the intention of the shoulder that we're seeing was to see the patterning for the graphic for today, but in reality, that shoulder will be planted to the left of the person that you're seeing on the yep, so that it wouldn't be something that a child would feel like they could come up to the edge to have an overlook. Now, the area that the first slide where we were standing closer to the glass box and looking over the side, that is paving up to the edge. But as Amy had noted, the pattern is such by code that it can't have a specific size opening for like climbability and things like that.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I was thinking. So you're thinking this is going to be 4 feet?
We have in our. I'm sorry, you can go.
Go ahead.
Nope, you can go.
I was going to say it'd be a minimum of 3 feet 6, which is 42 inches. That's the code minimum for a guardrail, and we could extend that higher if the desire of the committee is to extend it higher to 48.
For what it's worth, this is Nick. I mean, it to me seems a little busy and expensive looking, and possibly dangerous too. I don't know.
Yeah, this is not necessarily set in stone. I mean, if the committee has concerns over it, we can consider other railing options.
So it'd be easy for me to say just go with the 48. It's higher, it's safer, and the answer to that is yes. Aesthetically, I don't know what difference that would make, but that seems very inviting for. I'm glad to hear you're going to plant like along the side, so that's helpful. But I'd be inclined to, unless someone said differently, I won't say the higher the better, because obviously you don't want the thing like a wall. But these are still young kids, and yeah, I would think 48 if that's possible.
So there's still time for adjustment on that. You know, this is what's being priced for design development estimating, but we can make adjustments to that as we move forward through construction documents.
I would take your opinion on that. Like, if it was your kids and stuff at that age and stuff, I mean, anyway, I'm just curious as your opinion on that, like your professional opinion on the safety. Obviously, it's going to be safe, but we better give.
Yeah, I think the issue that Amy and Jessica brought up as far as climbability is one of my concerns. Is that a vertical post rail may be more appropriate to prevent that climbability aspect.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you.
Sure. One thing to note before we go into the floor plans is just this set of doors. There's one here and there's another one below it. Can't see it through the fence, but those two doors are accessible to the elevator. So this courtyard is accessible via that elevator. It opens up to this side of the upper platform, and then it opens up to the lower portion of the the courtyard as well. So if there was anybody that needed to use the elevator from the courtyard space itself, that option is available. We'll go through that in the plans.
If I could just add one quick comment, and that is that, and perhaps considerations already been given, but I think lighting for this area would be needed, some exterior lighting of some sorts, and it's probably just not showing the material, perhaps it's included. Just want to make sure that was in the specs and incorporated into the pricing.
It is, Diane. We do have building mounted lighting for the courtyard in most cases. I don't believe we have anything out in the site itself, but I could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I misspeak. But I know that we have the building mounted lighting. It's just not shown in the rendition.
I've talked with our consultant on the lighting within the courtyard, and in the document package, you'll see the foot candles showing the spread of the lighting. That we don't have fixtures within the courtyard, but the lighting that you had noted, Kemp, gives adequate foot candles within this space to cover it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. In the interest of time, I know that we're past our original scheduled time of 11:30, but hopefully everybody has a few more minutes because we have some interior views we want to share, as well as a plan. So I'm going to cruise through these playground images again. And as Jessica mentioned earlier, the design review group that we've been working with, which is a subgroup from the building committee, has not yet vetted these playgrounds. We intend to do that with you moving forward. We needed to get something into the PD pricing set. So Jessica has done a great job working with a playground equipment manufacturer. Everything that you see here is within the price point allocation from the schematic design estimate. So we're confident that what you're seeing here can be purchased within the budget that we have established. It's just a matter of now making sure that everybody is on board with the elements that are shown. So I'd rather not get into critique. Just want to show what we have currently for pricing, and it can all change in accordance with working with the group as we move forward.
I also
go ahead.
I just want to add, when we're looking at these now enlarged views, these were done by the rep to just show the character of how the kids can experience play. So when you're seeing the context of site, that's not our model. So we would need to blend those two things. So if you have any questions about the exterior, site wall or some of the paving, we're going to be updating this information into our model as we move on to have more of a detailed conversation about play at another time. So I just want to kind of put that out there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are just two views of the ELP playground, just a little bit more of an enlarged view of one of the main elements of the playground. And then I think we have two views of the lower 5 through 12 age group playground. This piece of what's intended to look like a sidewalk is this piece here, which is at the bottom of that set of stairs and that sloped walk that comes down to that entrance to the playground. Again, there will be fences around these playgrounds. They're just not shown. And as just mentioned, these images are getting integrated into our overall three-dimensional model, so we can do better renderings of the context of our main site in future versions.
Kemp, I'm just going to interrupt here. I don't know if there's actually going to be a fence tight to this playground down at the lower level, because there is intended to be a property line fence all around that back area.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Yeah. But there will be one around the ELP. So again, just going to cruise through these just real quick, just to kind of show the character of it, but still a work in progress. So that brings us to the interior design, and Amanda's going to join us. Amy, or is Dean still on the line? Is he able to go through the floor plans, or should I do that? All right, I will do that. So, colorized floor plans of the main building. This is the main entrance vestibule here. So you come in from the site here. You have this is your primary main entrance for ingress of students in the morning, as well as the bus entry down here. There is a 6-foot elevation change from this, what we call the assembly wing, and I'm going to trace around the media center because this zone is the area that's actually 6 feet lower. There is an internal ramp in this corridor that has four intermediate ramp flights, if you will, with one enlarged landing in the center of it that corresponds to the intermediate level of the media center, and that will make more sense when you see the images in a few minutes. But this media center is developed into 3 tiers. There's an upper tier here, which is even with the upper floor, the main floor. There's one intermediate tier, which has accessibility access from that ramp with a flat portion landing at the center, and that's more of the classroom environment within the library media center. And then there's the exploration zone down at the bottom, which is at the lower level, 6 feet below the upper level. And that's accessible at the bottom of the ramp from the doors here. We'll get into more detail on that in a minute. We have the large gymnasium here, which will accommodate a middle school size basketball court and the platform that immediately abuts the gymnasium to facilitate assemblies. Your music spaces and some storage functions here. Group bathrooms, which has an immediate adjacency not only to the cafeteria, but also to the exterior where you may have students coming back from recess to use the restrooms. And then the kitchen facility here with the loading and receiving zone here that you saw earlier. The main school is designed for the ELP wing on the main level is a single-story building, and that's traced out in this area here. And that intersects in this knuckle with the 2-story K5 wing over here. And we have, on each floor level, we have 3 pods of classrooms by grade level is the intent. So this one has been labeled kindergarten, and you'll note that those kindergarten rooms are slightly larger than the other classrooms in the pods. And then we have what would potentially be 1st grade, 2nd grade, and then when you go down one level, potentially 3rd, 4th, and 5th, or vice versa. In the interior knuckle, we have 2 dedicated DLC classrooms in that interior knuckle, and those classrooms overlook the courtyard. And then finally, in this zone here, we have a OTPT space, which is a special ed space that's accessible not only for the K5 folks, but also the ELP students. And that was important to keep that accessible from the extension of the main lobby. So that is why that was located there. We have a faculty dining space and then some additional special ed spaces here. Down below is where we have the art space and then a world language classroom in that portion. And as we noted when we reviewed the courtyard, that art room has a juxtaposition to that outdoor classroom within the courtyard. So you have that extension of that art classroom into the courtyard, which I think is quite nice. All the gray area are the mechanical spaces, main water here, main electrical here. We have some large bulk building storage in the darker gray, your main mechanical, and a fire pump room here. And that fire pump room has direct access to the exterior, which was a requirement. We have this small lower lobby, which you'll see an image for in a moment. And one last thing to point out are the learning commons. You'll see the zone here outside of the pod of classrooms. That is the learning commons area, which you'll also see a couple of images for in a second. and each pod has its own set of group bathrooms, which are stacked for efficiency. And finally, I guess I didn't mention the admin space, but this is the primary K5 admin. And as mentioned earlier, the ELP admin spaces are along this front edge with a nurse's suite here, which is also accessible from K5 and or the ELP. So we're getting dual shared use out of that nurse's suite as well as the OTPT space from both programs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to talk about some of the interior images.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this first image is looking at as if you were walking from the ELP corridor into the main lobby. This is the connection between the entry vestibule through the lobby. The vestibule on the left is the one that goes out to the courtyard. And if you're heading here towards the media center and the main corridor, you can see here we have brought the wood ceiling in from the outside. So there really is a connection between the exterior. The flooring is tile that sort of runs through the whole space. And what you see in the middle is an expansive walk-off carpet, which not only is required by code, but it sort of warms up the space where, you know, we have tile in here for durability, but the carpet really helps to sort of make it not feel so cold. And you can see where we have this little spot of blue in the middle, that's highlighting a display case and sort of draws you into that area. And that, again, we bring in that Darien blue so that it has a connection to what's happening on the exterior. Then you see glimpses of that on the interior. I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to add to this. You can sort of see, oh, sorry, I was going to say on the right-hand side, there's that little box in the vestibule. That would be the area where you would come in and check in with the security before you enter into the admin area. So that's the transaction window for entry.
Yep, thank you. And the only thing I was going to add was that you get a sense from this view of the transparency of that main lobby from courtyard side to the left to main entrance to the right.
So this would be the view looking back towards that, sort of that bright area in the back is where the lobby we were just at is. And this is if you progressed past that, we have the display case right in the center where that's really kind of the main intersection between the admin area, the primary stair that connects the lower main level, the classroom wing. So that's sort of a great place. We wanted to really activate it with student work or be able to use that to display stuff. The stair here you see has that same railing that we talked about on the exterior. And we did look at other options so we can, if that railing doesn't make sense here for that patterning and possible climbability, we just wanted to show this as a placeholder for how this railing connects to the outside. And then what you're seeing behind that is a placeholder for a custom graphic. We thought this would be a great place to really connect the lower level and the main level with this like graphic that not only is something that sort of speaks to the design throughout the space, but also can incorporate some of those words from the Oxford Code to really enliven that stair. So it's not just a functional stair, but something a little bit more artistic. And then you can see here where you can see right through that main admin area. So even though they are sort of separated, they have visible connection between the whole corridor, the stairway, the main lobby, but still have a little bit of privacy for that area. So it's not just fully on display.
One other thing to point out that I don't think is fully rendered yet is that you can see this little circle element here in the ceiling. That is actually a skylight that goes through to the roof. So there will be a splash of natural light coming into that stairwell. We need to get that correctly modeled and into the rendering.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Kemp. Before you move on, I just wanted to share that I think the way that the railing is rendered in this view is more representative of the scale of the openings within the railing.
Yes, good point.
And here's what you'd see if you went down those stairs into the lower lobby. This is sort of that connection point between that main level and the lower level. Right adjacent to this is the art room. So we thought this would be a really great space to activate with what you're seeing in the background is a wall of tackable surface that's also acoustical. So it kind of, even if there's nothing on it, we wanted it to have a little bit of interest in it. So the panels are just cut slightly within the 4x8 foot parameters. And then if they want to put up an entire display, they can use that for artwork display or any other thing that they want to highlight in that area. And then again, you're seeing a bottom of the stairs to really like activate that space and give you something interesting, and that the art room and at the lower level classrooms can really use these to display stuff and put kids artwork and get them interested in like being in these spaces. You see that railing come down here, and then the graphic that was upstairs kind of come down and wraps the corner here. This was if you're back up at the top stairs. If you turned 90 degrees from where we were looking at the admin and the display case at the top of the stairs, this is behind you, which is the entrance to the media center. Again, we're using that boxed blue frame to really highlight the entrance here, that's that Darien blue that connects to the exterior, that connects to the display cases, and it is sort of a theme you see throughout the building here. So you can see into the top level of the media center, which is where we have the reception desk and all the stacks, and sort of a little reading area off to the left-hand side for the littlest kids.
Just for clarification, all that glass there is the sort of security proof that we discussed. Is that correct?
Yes, that would have the security film for the interior glass we talked about. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
And just a view is if you step through the door, what you first see is the reception desks that sort of has a view of the entire space, even though they're on a different level than the other two. The librarian sitting here really does have a great view of what's happening in the large presentation, as well as the exploration zone, which are on those two different levels. They can see through the stacks to the reading area, and as well as out in the corridor to make sure that that space is monitored as well. So this just shows you that there's a lot of book display possibilities, and you're also seeing the blue at the ceiling that's lighting in acoustical baffles that sort of add to a little bit of playfulness in here. We wanted to make sure that they were not just something visual, but they also do serve a purpose for functioning of acoustics and lighting. And then same with the little sort of flower petal or little spots that you see back there. Those are also acoustical panels that we just wanted to do something fun and playful instead of just having a big wall of panels in there. So that sort of leads you down into the two other zones.
And one thing to note are the exterior windows. You have fairly large expanse of exterior windows that look out into that knuckle between the assembly space and that first classroom pod, which is to the left through those windows. And so you get some nice daylight into that reading niche and reading zone up on the upper level. And also you can see that the height of the media center is maintained, the ceiling height throughout. And so as you go down those three tiers that I mentioned while we were looking at the plan, the space gets taller as you get toward the exploration zone, which should be more apparent in this view.
So now this is, if you've moved forward to the to the farthest point of the top level where you're standing at the railing that overlooks the large presentation zone, which is also a student group area. There is a whiteboard and a instructional whiteboard in that area, as well as more bookcases. And then down to the next tier, you're seeing down to the large exploration zone that is sort of that combination of a student work area, but also a maker space. They can do, the flooring down there is a little bit more resilient, so they also have a sink in that back area. So all of that, they can do the like science experiments or arts and crafts in that area as well, and there's supervision over the whole space from the top level.
And this set of doors here from the intermediate level are the set of doors that exit out onto that larger landing in the corridor ramp system that I mentioned in the plan. And then the door beyond here is down at the floor level of the 6 feet elevation change between the main level and the lower level of the assembly wing. So that's accessible from that level.
And here's a first glimpse into what you would see as you're walking down the corridor towards the classroom pods. This is the corridor view, and to the right-hand side is where we have that learning commons that's sort of enclosed with the locker bank here. The concept was that each pod has its own color. So there were 3 colors: the blue, a sort of aqua teal color, and then a green. And as you progress down the hallway, the next one you would see would be the teal, and then the last one would be the green. And that repeats on the lower level as well. We just wanted to kind of give that wayfinding and have a little bit more visual activity in the space, that highlighting these pods can really help you identify where you're going and break up this huge expanse of space here. And it just makes it a little bit more playful, adding some of the color to the lockers. And as you can see in the background, we have the little reading nook and display boxes that are highlighted with color. We do have the visual connection still to the classroom with the glass windows. There, it's high enough so that if you're sitting at that little counter space there, the kids can't see into the classroom, but that if you're a teacher in either space, you sort of have that visual connection between the classroom and what's happening in the learning commons. And what you're seeing on the side is, again, it's sort of something to artistically break up the space, but along that corridor wall, there's acoustical panels that also serve as tackboard and then writable surface. So I know one thing we heard when we met with the teachers is that they really do love to display stuff. They were looking for more and more places for either tack up or magnetic or writing surface. So that really does help them activate that whole wall and be able to share what they're doing with the kids. This is the view from the opposite direction, looking back into the learning commons. This is sort of what you see here is the other side of that big blue box is really a writable surface. You get more view of that, the little nooks that we have in here, the seating areas, countertop where they can work individually or work with a teacher if they need to be pulled out and have a little one-on-one time. And then you start to see some of the floor pattern there where it's not a solid color, but we're using 2 different tones of wood to sort of activate those spaces and designate what is corridor versus the seating area spaces.
And just to note, it's not actual wood, it's a LVT product, correct?
Yep. Here is a view into the corridor. This is as if you're walking down or not corridor, cafeteria. This is as if you're walking down the corridor into the cafeteria to show that there really isn't a witness. Oh,
Amanda, sorry for, you may have said this, I may have missed it.
That's okay.
So those other hallways around the building, are they color matched, or did you talk about that from the last meeting?
Yes, so there's 3 pods like that on each floor.
Yeah.
So we wanted to sort of break it up so it's not monotonous on the same one. So each pod has an individual color that sort of mimic what's happening on the exterior, where we saw like in the playground how it had those blues to greens. So that was what we were intending in here. So it goes from blue to a light blue to a green and sort of flows down the corridor. So each one has an identity, but it's not like just identifying like kindergarten is blue because it repeats on both floors. So it just sort of helps wayfind along the these long corridors.
Yeah, I'm just reiterating that that's the case. Okay, thanks.
Yep. So then this was the cafeteria. Again, what you're seeing is how it really is open to the corridor, that you have that same flooring that the wood look LVT, and we're just using a little bit of accent there to designate what is the cafeteria versus the corridor, and sort of playful floor pattern that mimics what's happening in the acoustical panels that you see on the wall. We have this sort of ribboning ceiling, which again, our whole concept for the interiors was these elements that are sort of playful, that suggest things from the exterior, whether it's clouds or sky or currents or water, and that is brought into these spaces. And then you see little elements of that, and then taking those elements and bringing them into other pieces like this accent that you see on the wall, which again is acoustical panel, that instead of just having like a plain acoustical panel, we really wanted to make it playful and fun. And then you can see where that transitions into that floor pattern. The big window there is had they mentioned on the exterior, which opens up to the an area where they can actually pull tables outside and have them outside for eating when the weather is nice. What else you see in here? I don't know if anybody else has comments on.
I'll just add one more comment, that this set of doors here is the path out to that sidewalk that down to the playgrounds. Obviously, we don't have that shown in the far background, but that is where that entrance walk goes down to the playgrounds on the outside. And then also the servery zone is right here. So this is depicting a metal grate you can secure that serving zone from the cafeteria on off hours, but then that would roll up and it would be open to the cafeteria. And then this spot over here is the tray drop.
Right.
And I think that may wrap us up.
Wait, no.
Appreciate everybody's. No,
wait.
I'm sorry. There's more.
One more. So this is just a quick view into the ELP Commons and what we have in there, since it's another one of those big open spaces. This is a little bit of an older rendering. I think I changed the colors a bit, so it's the yellow that you see on the right-hand side that highlights the nooks isn't so predominant. It's a little bit more subtle and kind of reads in with that the wall covering there, which we really like because it pulls all of those colors from the entire building in together and is a nod to what's happening on the exterior, but in like the subtle, very youthful, vibrant way. You have whiteboards and display area and an interactive whiteboard. So this place can really be utilized in a multitude of different ways. If they want to have someone come in and do poetry or read or have like a little class gathering out here, it really does give them a lot of opportunity to do different things in this space, but also has connection to what's happening in the rest of the building, that this ELP is not totally separate from the rest of the school, that there is a connection visually between all of that. And what you're seeing out the window is sort of you would see across into the classroom pods, but this does go out into the corridor as we saw in the exterior renderings.
Right. So this set of doors goes out to the courtyard, and you can see in this rendition that you can see through the courtyard to the K5 wing beyond, which also has a glazed facade at that point. So again, the transparency from in to out and back in again is prominent. So I think that is our last image for the current design, and we're going to talk a little bit about enabling phase, and Amy's going to go through that rather quickly, I think.
I think that was a hint. So we can move quickly past this slide. This is I think we're all familiar with that one. And this image reminds us all of the demolition that will be occurring this coming summer as a part of the enabling phase. The south wing of the two, call them front wings of the building, will come down, and we will be replacing the program areas that are displaced by that demolition in the same summer construction, with some changes to the existing footprint, utilization of spaces a little bit differently, as well as the addition of a portable unit, which we'll see in an upcoming slide. Yeah, in that area, exactly. This shows you the reason for that demolition and the overlap. And it also highlights in yellow where the location of the new portable is, that will be for the library. Dave Cravanzola, if you're still on the line, I've dropped into this presentation your 2 slides. Dave has prepared the site logistics plans for the planning and zoning submission, and they're represented here. In pale yellow is the construction. Green, there's a secured area that's gated and fenced, where there will be construction traffic from time to time back and forth for soil transport. The temporary soil stockpile is there on the west end of the site, southwest corner of the current play area. And I think that's enough for this slide. That will be basically the construction fencing for the majority of time. And then when the new building is opened and school can start in the new building in the fall of 2022, there will be some site work remaining. Dave's got the pale yellow color on the construction area that will be in place during the summer of 2022, and then completing some of the landscaping and playgrounds later that fall.
Nice job, Amy. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks, Dave. There we go. This is the enabling phase building plan, and this slide just represents exactly in gray are actually areas that are impacted by the enabling phase. You'll see where Kemp was highlighting that the library is going to be used as teaching space and offset into the portable unit for library classes. That was working with the administration to minimize the number of traffic, the number of patterns that students have to go indoor and outdoor. So we've carefully selected that any full-time classes will remain in the existing building proper, and that the portables will be used for specials and other classrooms that don't necessarily take place full-time every day for every student. And you'll see that the main office is going to be in the classroom, correct, just to the north of the main entry doors. The same main entry doors will remain in place throughout the next couple of school years. There we go.
I think that concludes our presentation, because we've already gone through the, well, I guess we haven't gone through the regulatory. We've gone through the regulatory. We haven't gone through this. So you want to go through that, Amy?
Sure. So this is just letting the committee know the next steps. Upon this presentation, we're hoping for your authorization to proceed into the construction documents phase, which will be a 10-week duration. And at 8 weeks, there's a deliverable discussed with ONG that becomes our 90% CDs. That's a set that will be ready for pricing to confirm that we're remaining on budget, and to be able to have that same set go to a third-party reviewer who will do the local permit review for the code review. And so that's in 8 short weeks. At the end of the next 3 to 4 weeks, as we had mentioned and Dave described in the schedule, we'll have an estimate reconciliation and then come back to this committee for approval to go then to the state for their DDR approval. And so once we complete construction documents and all of the regulatory approvals, local and state, we'll be going right into the bidding phase. I skipped over enabling phase, it looks like, but we discussed the due dates for that one already.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, that the enabling construction documents have been underway for a few weeks now, just so we can meet that deadline of completing those documents by April 13th.
All right, so with that, I think we turn it back to Kip and conclude our portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you all from the SLAM team for this presentation. Do you need from this committee today authorization to proceed, or can we do that in the next day or two?
It could be happening in the next day or two. That's fine, just so long as we are all comfortable that we're going to proceed into the CD phase.
Right. Well, I can take a vote of the people online right now if you'd like me to do that.
If that's convenient for you to do today, it would be preferred.
Well, let me pose it to the committee. For those on the committee who are still online, can I have a motion to authorize SLAM to proceed to construction documents as they work through the estimate of the design development phase?
This is Diane. Yeah, I'll propose that.
I will. This is Duke. I'll second it.
Okay. I'll do a quick read. Is there any discussion on this matter from anybody from the committee?
My only comment is it'd be good to make a plan to reconvene the sort of design review group to address a few things that might have come up today and areas that are new to us. So just setting a plan for proceeding and continuing to provide feedback would be good.
I think that question, because there's a number of things that are still in the works.
Right.
Having a motion to proceed with authorization and seconded. I'm now going to do a quick roll call. Vote yes or no. Randy?
I believe he left.
I don't hear from Randy. I know Nick's no longer on the line. Katie, how do you vote? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Rusty is not on the line. He's gone. Sean?
Yes.
John Zagrodzky? Not on the line. Mike Alfieri?
Yes.
I know Diane says yes. Randy Giraldo, are you there? Well, I've got 7 votes saying yes. That solves our quorum issue. So the authorization to proceed is now official. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kip.
Okay, so our last item of business is discussing our next meeting. Because some of the regulatory meetings have changed again, I want to go back and talk with Jeremy and Randy about that. I know that David Cravenzola talked about needing authorization by April 30th. I'm not sure if that's changed or not, David. Has it?
We are looking to still get approval by the 30th so that we can schedule our early May meetings with OSCG&R.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to poll the committee in the next day or two as to when our next meeting should be. Our next regular scheduled meeting would normally be, I believe it's April, is it 2 weeks from now? However, I'm not sure with the remote meeting, it's that easy to pull off. But I know we have to have one there for David before the 30th. We may want to do it the 23rd instead. But let me poll the committee and understand the issues, and I'll come back to everybody on that. Okay.
Kip, one thing there, if I may know, I think that the 23rd is, if it was a Thursday, it would be very tight as far as making sure that the estimate is complete and reconciled, which is why we were airing as late in April as possible for the 30th for the meeting. I believe that was the discussion that we had internally with SLAM. So I think the 23rd only gives us, I think the 23rd is too tight.
Okay, so well, we know we have to do one then on the 30th then. The only question then will be for our committee whether we want to have a meeting before then as well. And we'll get back on that. We'll definitely schedule one for the 30th.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other business to come before the committee? I thank everyone for their patience and bearing with this presentation. A lot has been done, and we're keeping this process going. Thank you very much for all contributing, and also for the ex officio members who contributed, as well as all the SLAM people, and for our people from Channel 79, Cecil Wade, Jim Cameron, and Mike Wheeler.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I will second, Duke.
And I'm going to basically say, unless someone says no, your silence will indicate we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Nice job, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Thank you.
Amy Samuelson.
I will hit stop recording and I will send the video to Mike or Cecil, or both.
You've got my email address. This is Cecil.
Yeah, no, send it to Cecil.
Yes, I do. Will do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much.